For as many men who have recently fallen to charges of sexual harassment and assault, many more victims are finally finding their voice and the courage to share their experiences. It began, of course, with the women who came forward about movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's alleged predatory ways in last month's New York Times. Their stories touched off an avalanche of accusations against powerful and popular men. Here in Boston, former Channel 5 anchor Heather Unruh triggered her own avalanche, tweeting this a week after the Times story: "The Weinstein scandal has emboldened me. Truth time. I was a Kevin Spacey fan until he assaulted a loved one. Time the dominoes fell, and boy, did they ever." Just weeks later, the House of Cards star was accused of sexual assault by actor Anthony Rapp when he was 14 years old at the time. Others have since come forward, prompting studios to drop projects with Spacey. And late last week, Unruh revealed the identity of the loved one, her then 18-year-old son, who was allegedly sexually assaulted by Spacey last summer on Nantucket. The Cape and Islands District Attorney has since opened up an investigation into the case. Joining me now are Heather Unruh. Nice to see you, Heather. Thanks for being here. And her son's lawyer, Mitchell Garabedian, who, as you know, has represented thousands of victims of abuse in the Catholic Church and elsewhere. Mitchell, thanks so much for being here. Your first tweet, 8 days after the Weinstein story broke, Heather. If there was no Weinstein story, would we not know about your son's story?
You wouldn't know about it right now. That's for certain, yeah.
Meaning there might have been another trigger, but without that one, it wouldn't have happened then.
That definitely sent out such an emotional charge, and it did in our home, and started a lot of discussions on everything that was happening. And my son always felt from the beginning that he wanted to do something to stop Kevin Spacey and to make sure that he didn't hurt other people. He just was very, very afraid, and frankly, he was very embarrassed. So this was a real touchstone for us. You
said during the press conference, during the question and answer thing, that you hadn't told him about your initial tweet, which didn't identify him, but he did know and approved of you doing the press conference. What changed for him?
The climate in the country started to change. And, you know, he's a sophomore in college. They talk about things in classes, and it definitely comes up in discussions. And I think he just felt that the time was right. And it's, you know, it's a difficult decision to make. But I think with this landslide of accusations coming out and, you know, the encouragement of victims beginning to speak out, he felt like it was a safer environment.
What happens in your office when someone like Heather Unruh and her daughter sit on a stage with you and say what they said? What comes after that?
An incredible amount of victims come forward who claim to have been sexually abused. It could be by a powerful person. It could be by a priest. It could be by the neighbor, the husband, you name it. It empowers everyone, and it's an honor to sit here with Heather, who's a strong, courageous, independent woman who's speaking up on behalf of thousands upon thousands of victims.
Were any of those people reach out to you suggesting that Spacey had assaulted them?
No, not yet. But
they've reached out to me.
Since your press conference? How many?
Probably half a dozen.
And are they Nantucket connected or beyond Nantucket?
Some are Nantucket connected. I talked to one gentleman today who has a Nantucket connection, and some are in Great Britain, some are in New York, Pennsylvania, LA. They're really spread out everywhere.
And are any of them contemplating doing what you did and going public with this?
Yeah, in fact, one gentleman in Great Britain who has done some speaking, but anonymously, is not ready to reveal his identity yet, has gone to the police, and he said that it was from that initial tweet that I did that gave him the confidence to go and report it.
By the way, I have to admit, since you're sitting here, I criticized you on the radio
for
that initial tweet.
A lot of people did.
Saying that essentially that he didn't have an opportunity to defend himself when you don't identify anybody, and so I'll take this opportunity to apologize to you. Obviously began to change the world. How hard was the past year for you and your son? I mean, Spacey is all over the place. He's on award shows. He's winning honors left and right. You can't avoid him. Yeah. How hard was that for you and your kid?
Very difficult. Very difficult. You know, for my son, who always loved his movies, it's been sort of a sea change of what he and his friends watch. For me, moments like the Tony Awards were very upsetting.
He was the host of the Tony
Awards.
And
I wanted to reach out to the Tony Awards people and say, what are you thinking? Because it's all over the internet.
Why didn't you?
I was afraid.
Afraid
and
of?
is very, very angry still.
You know, in that press conference, you said you wanted him to go to jail. There was
Yeah.
a poignant moment where you looked at Mitchell Garbedian to see if it was okay to answer, and you
Yeah.
did, and you said you wanted to go to jail. Here's a little piece of his sort of half-assed apology to Anthony Rapp, in which he says, of course, I don't remember anything, but if I did, as he describes, I own the sincerest apology, et cetera, et cetera. If there was no if there, if he stood up and said, I did do this, and I feel horrible about it, and I apologize to your whole family, including particularly your son, would that make a difference, or would it not make a difference?
In our case or Mr. Rapp's case?
Well, I'm talking about your family's case.
That's hard to say. It's very hard to say. That would be a first step. That would be a good first step to admit it and not have all of the people out there who are bashing my son and I and my family for speaking out. That would be a real admission and a real indication that he had been looking inward and doing some reflecting and some work on himself.
You know, I've heard both of you say, and there have been accounts, that originally your son, you went to the sheriff on Nantucket. Your son subsequently has, is that correct?
Yes, and police.
Now the DA, O'Keefe, is taking a look at this and is waiting to hear from her son. Do you worry? I mean, no one in the world has more experience in this. You know what you're going to hear. He wasn't a minor. As you admitted, he lied about his age, so Kevin Spacey thought he was feeding drinks to a 21-year-old. How do you prepare a Heather Unruh and her son for the kind of crap you have to endure when you decide to stand up and charge someone who's abused you?
Be proud. Tell the truth. You're empowering yourself, you're empowering other victims, and you're making the world a safer place for children. Be proud.
Is there going to be a
Although
civil?
Mitch really did lay it out there for my son and told him everything that was coming. He went in eyes wide open to what kind of beating he may take.
And he's okay with that now?
He's okay with it now. He's in a good place with his decision, and he feels really strongly that this is the right thing to have done.
Is there going to be a civil action? I know you're representing her son.
It's well within the statute of limitations. We're
So there
doing
could
our
be.
investigation.
You said you were hoping the woman at the bar who was kind enough to walk up to
Yeah.
your son when Spacey went to the bathroom and says, get out of here, comes forward. Have you heard from her since the press conference?
No,
Okay.
sadly I haven't, but I'm not giving up hope that she will come forward.
You know, while I just acknowledge that I criticized your first tweet, I'm going to try to compensate for that by praising, and even though I don't understand it totally, you're retweeting some of the most vicious comments on Twitter that have been made about you and your son. Why have you decided to do that?
Because if they are doing this to me, what are they doing to other victims? And I can take a lot. I can shrug a lot of this off, although Mitch knows this has been very hurtful, and there have been times when I've been very low, and we've all been very low. But I think that if we're at a tipping point in this country, the big part of it is we have to educate people who are out there on victim blaming and what a sexual assault really is, because there isn't a gray area, as so many people suggest. So I felt like I didn't attack them back, but I put it out there, here's what people are saying, and other people have certainly challenged them.
Does that cause you any regret at all? Going out there, being out there as you were, in light of some of the comments? I mean, you've gotten a lot of supportive stuff as well.
I don't have any regret. It's been a very difficult several days. It's been very difficult, I'm not going to lie, but I do not regret the decision to come forward.
On some of those tweets, you have hashtag Me Too. Is that about you, or is that just about solidarity with other women?
Me too.
Me Too.
Yeah.
What do you say to people, I ask you this every time you're here, to people at home who watched her, who were thinking about her kid, and have lived through a similar experience? I don't mean with Spacey, with anybody. What do you say to them?
It wasn't your fault. You shouldn't be ashamed of yourself. Have self-esteem. Speak out. Be proud. Get into therapy. And live with no regrets. The best revenge is to lead a good, healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
Has the mere fact of coming out with this helped you in some way, and your son?
Yeah. In sort of a strange way, it has. I mean, for every one person who just spews hate at us, there are at least 100 that are saying,
That's great.
Thank you so much. And I can't tell you the amount of people unrelated to Kevin Spacey's alleged assaults who have come forward and say, because of you, I have the courage to come out now and talk about it.
Well,
and I think that's
thank you
wonderful.
too. So thank you,
Thank
Heather
you.
Unruh, for doing this, and Mitchell Garvey,
Thank you,
and
Jim.
thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you both. It's great to see you. Thank you.